You know, it wasn't long ago, like a couple of days ago, that I just happened to upload a video talking about how much I love this series. After that, I just wanted to enjoy the rest of the show and do a full review of it when it ran its full 13 episodes. But when a bigger YouTube channel takes something cute and educational that is generally humorous and biologically accurate, and heavily implies that it's giving off some sort of pro-terminal illness message in the latest episode, I can't just keep my mouth shut. That is what Robyn, the face of Anime America, has done, either intentionally or not. If suggestion wasn't such a powerful thing, I wouldn't think of having to make a rebuttal to that video, but knowing how other people will likely respond in kind when episode 7 comes out, especially if they've heard what she has to say, I figured I'd better prepare something just in case. Now please, if you have or have had any consideration for this series, lend me your ear and listen to what I have to say until the end. You might not like what it is, but you might be surprised or come to some sort of better understanding about something. I have been following Cells at Work since its manga started showing up in Barnes & Noble. I love it. I think it's great, and it scratches this little itch of mine where I want my manga to tell me more about things that I don't know that much about. The simple premise of the story is, it's a tale about the cells of the human body and what they do to assist our daily bodily functions. It has an incredible amount of detail concerning the nature of its characters, their designs, what they can and can't do, as well as the world that is the body that they live in. It's kinda silly and lighthearted, despite how simple injuries to the body cause catastrophic damage to these cells' homes, and innumerable members of this body no doubt have died off-screen. It's not to be taken overly seriously, even when dealing with events potentially traumatic to their world. It is in fact a comedy, which is only slightly out of parody, and once again I'll say, I really like it. But at now more than halfway through the series of the anime, some fans, and now probably former fans it seems, have hit a bit of a snag in their enjoyment of it. In Robyn's case, whether or not she actually liked the show at all in the first place is shaky at best. Our problem is that this potentially life-threatening mutation of cells, that is, cancer, is not depicted the way that I think most people expected it to be. Maybe some big, bad, ugly boss monster whose goal is to destroy the body and all who inhabit it. But that's not quite the case. Instead, what we got was the story of a cell who despises his fate, and we see his motives in the form of a tragic backstory. He's not a giant tumor of a monster. Well, not most of the time he's around this time anyway. His goal is not total destruction of everything he touches, at least not this time around anyway. And his design is, well, he's not the horribly ugly evil thing that you think of when someone mentions cancer, right? Can we just point out the fact that he's the progenitor of 100 at least other cancerous cells, which seem to look a lot closer to those expectations? Understandably, this initial subversion of expectations catches a lot of people by surprise, and these uncomfortable and conflicting feelings arise. Seeing these little precancerous cells running for their lives and wondering what they did to deserve being killed right out of their incubation tanks, and watching as their friends get killed just for existing in a state that weren't their own fault, is, well, sad. The current version of this particular cancer cell understandably hates this and wants his revenge against the immune system and the body in general, asking who is it that gives them the right to say that he has to die just because he was born different. He fights the system because he's just doing what the rest of them were doing. That is, what he was, albeit accidentally, created for. His fate is to die. He doesn't want to die, so he does what he can to survive, and that is, ultimately to the demise of the body, completely by coincidence. Not that he cares. When I first read this, I had that weird feeling in my stomach, this emotional and empathetic part that kind of feels bad for this character because everything that happened to him was out of his control and he hated it, having no choice but to embrace it or die and question why he was even born. No matter how you slice it, that's tragic. But this guy is literal cancer! He's a terminal disease, a mutation. Cells like this kill people. It's not cool to make me feel bad about this sad existence. I'm sure many people relate to that. I understand firsthand what it's like to go into this arc and hate it because I got this feeling that was really, really wrong. So what do we do with those feelings? You see, that's one of the things about being human. Most of us have advanced thought processes that are able to take a step back from something like this and say, regardless of what his circumstances are and whether or not he is in control of them, this cancer is still the villain. He's a bad guy who can't stop doing what he's doing, and what he's doing is wrong, so the way he is dealt with in the series is appropriate. Cells at Work is a show that makes you learn and makes you think. If you have any appreciation for the painstaking detail and medical editing that went into this series, you'd have to realize that making cancer this way is not a decision that must have been made lightly. Every cell in the series is a character. Every character is defined by what they can do as a cell, and within those bounds is given a personality and traits of their own. In the case of cancer, a cell whose precursors show up in the human body an average of hundreds of times a day, only to be killed by your immune system before they can replicate, there was no exception. When one sneaky precancerous cell manages to escape and become cancer, it begins a process that can be potentially devastating to the host. It multiplies beyond reason, it doesn't die automatically like all the other cells do, and it steals energy and resources from the body without giving anything back. So, it's hunted down and killed again when it is found. How would a person react to being in a situation like that? One possibility is certainly the personification of cancer as shown in the series. I consulted an actual doctor I know, and have confirmed that if cancer were a person, they very well might just be this story. It is biologically accurate, much like just about everything else in this series. Now that I have explained a bit about where this potential controversy comes from, allow me to address directly exactly what I think is wrong about what Robyn had to say in her review of the show. First, we'll take a break from the literal cancer talk. I need to say that right from the outset of this video, she has an unpleasant tone about her, saying things that I guess are supposed to sound like positives before she gets to the halfway point. She makes a couple of offhanded comments about the character designs, citing specifically the outfit of our poster child red blood cell, and the childlike appearance of the platelets. I have to say, these things are pointed out as though they are made to cater to certain types of fans, but that could not be farther from the truth. Besides the confusing microscopic blood fountains, this funny show could not be any more safe for work. But somehow, red blood cells the short shorts are a focus of criticism? Especially when compared to the long pants of their male red blood cell counterparts. I've seen people actually complain about that, so I'm guessing this is what it was. I mean, my question is why? Not why the design, I mean why the complaint. She's designed to be a delivery girl. Her hat looks like her namesake, and she trolleys around oxygen and carbon dioxide. Her jacket is color-coded and reversible to reflect which one she is carrying. It is the short shorts, right? I mean, are they actually that distracting? I'm confused. Can somebody explain this to me? Then, there are the platelets. Of course, as with anything that you can look at and attach the word lolly to is involved, it is suggested that there is an alternative motive for how these characters appear. Yes, people do love the platelets. And can you guess why? Because they're cute. Trivia time, as pointed out in the manga, platelets are considerably smaller than other blood cells. But you know what? They are darn hard workers. They do their jobs as well as the other cells and are part of the educational process, not just around to be kawaii episode fillers. That's a side effect. Are people not allowed to appreciate this feeling of wanting to protect these little cells that actually do more to protect them? Why does she use these as a reason, or at least acts like it's a reason to stereotype the fans? To each their own, I believe, is what she said. It could be that Robyn is referring to what she would call the draws, things that draw the anime fans to the series, but she doesn't seem to say it kindly. She then closes out the faux end of this review with trivial statements about how it's nothing too special, but it's fine for the people who like it. And here's a side note for you. In this supposed review video, we are privy to a picture of what she calls head trauma, which is actually nothing more than a scrape wound. Trust me, you'll know when something is actually traumatic. Cancer is a very small problem by comparison at this point. Okay, now on to the actual cancer thing. Let me be abundantly clear that this is where it gets dicey if you couldn't already hear it in her voice. It is, especially at this point, that Robyn is not trying to be objective at all and is reacting very emotionally to this particular set of chapters, or 2 chapters. In fact, I'd be willing to bet that this reaction specifically is why she even decided to make this video, and probably put it together as soon as she could in relation to it. That's speculation on my part and open to being corrected if needed. Do not take it as fact. One way or another, I get the feeling that ever since she started the show, she was more or less looking for an out from it, and by this point, she took this as her chance to jump at that. Now, her problems with the cancer arc, which consequently affected her opinion on the rest of the series, supposedly, are as follows. Cancer cells are given human emotions. Yes, as I explained earlier, all cells in this series are personified as humans, and given personalities and emotions to match within the confines of what they represent. He should be no exception. The cancer cell is a hot pretty boy type. Why is he hot? I don't know. I don't think attraction to written characters drawn on paper is anything less than subjective. He's not much of a pretty boy, really, when compared to the others. I mean, the general art of the series is pretty amazing. He was formerly disguised as a normal cell, in fact, so without him being picked out specifically in certain scenes, he actually blends in seamlessly if you don't know who you're looking for. His true form, as depicted here, is just an altered version of that. Horribly altered, actually, with white hair. It could be, it's a choice to fit the character I described in the first segment of this video. I'm sorry if his design doesn't match that. Cancer Cell has a tragic backstory. Yeah, and I think I summarized that pretty well in the first half, too. It's the story of how a cancer cell becomes cancer, this little precancerous thing that was a copy error. It got away from the immune system and wants revenge. I mean, I can see why that would bother a lot of people, but you can't argue that it doesn't make sense. Conclusion, the story is trying to make cancer sympathetic. Correction. The story is not trying to make you feel bad for a deadly disease, it's making a character appropriate for the personification of that disease. And that results in a character that even the best of us will feel for, and feel that that person is a product of their circumstances. You aren't supposed to take this as, you should feel bad for real cancer. There's a distinction between this fictional thing and what reality actually is, even though it's kind of a mirror of reality. Yeah, it's conflicting, and it's kind of supposed to be. And the thing is, maybe this would be fine if she wasn't making another offhanded comment about expecting Rule 34 cancer art. I mean, this is a really petty complaint. And do you know why? Because she makes it sound like this would be something that is exclusive to fans of this specific series. And that's just not true. Why does she hate this show and how popular it is so much that she has to take stabs at the fans for things that gross jacks on the internet will do regardless of if they've even seen the show? Does she think this is the first time something like this has ever happened? It's not even rational. Just looking for things to complain about and vent out these negative feelings she has. So, what do I want people to take away from this video? First of all, that Robyn's emotional response to the first cancer arc is understandable, but also unprofessional in nature. This hardly counts as a review, and is clearly based on her emotions. There is nothing objective about it, and if she knew that going in, she should have at least addressed that at the start of the video, or gotten somebody else who could look at it more objectively to do it instead. This is why I mentioned having to take a step back when I first read Volume 2. This kind of thing hits you hard and riles you up. I am not a prime example of professionalism myself by any means, but I think a big YouTube channel like Anime America has certain standards to uphold. Then second, that what she's saying in this video shows a fundamental misunderstanding of the source material, and furthermore, the people who enjoy it. Robyn, if for some reason you manage to find this video and watch it to this point, I will say that it's okay for the cancer arc to bother you. You don't have to enjoy it. You don't have to like the show. Heck, one of the things that I like to say about stuff like this is, if you don't like it, then get out. Which you did, so I can actually appreciate that. But what I won't listen to is you making these very loaded statements about how cancer almost comes across like some sort of pro-terminal illness propaganda. which whether or not that's what you were saying, that's what it sounded like. I would almost call it slanderous, and that you're trying to emphatically try to encourage people to drop the show. But I know better than that. I know that people are bound to react strongly to this and will respond in kind on their own terms, depending on what they think. Cancer is deadly. It affects many people and has taken others indiscriminately from the ones they love. You've explained how it affected you firsthand, and that it makes you hate this part of the show, and you feel like you can't enjoy any part of it anymore. And I won't blame you for that. However, it is most certainly not promoting sympathy for a naturally occurring ailment with life-threatening potential. It is not trying to make cancer a character for people to love, and the way that cancer is depicted is not inappropriate at all. Also, if you want something more serious, which you seem to be complaining about this entire time, you can check out the spin-off called Cells at Work Black. I'm sure that's more up to your standards, based off of what you said. Unlike this show, which is obviously directed at a younger audience, the Black series is a seinen, educational, misery incarnate series. Now, I just want to add to this by stating that the point of this series again is being a show about what happens in the human body. Cells at work. Cells that are working. Cells that are doing their jobs. Right down to the last moment, neutrophil number 1146 is determined to do his job for the sake of the body. Even as the cancer cell tries to draw sympathy from him, even going so far as to call him a friend, he is determined to finish it, even though he's already made it apparent that he doesn't like the cell-killing part of his job. Still, he doesn't falter in his work, and ends the cancer cell as it promises to return. This series does not take cancer lightly, it does not redeem him as a character, and it does not allow him to have his way just because he is a sob-story pretty boy. Just because the cancer cell cries about only doing what he was made to do, and wonders why he was ever born in the first place out of somebody else's mistake, does not make it right to let him stick around. No time soon are they going to say, "We feel bad for you, Cancer. You're not so bad, so we'll let you stay, even though you're killing our world." If anything, by the time he comes back, they're even more determined to stop him and his ridiculous posturing and New World plans for the sake of the body they live in, which could be anybody. Again, if you don't like it, that's okay. Nobody has to like it, but please don't misunderstand what the point of the Cancer arc is. It draws out feelings of sympathy the same way that many other villain backstories do to explain their motivations. It will give you conflicting feelings. It's Cancer. It's supposed to make you uncomfortable. It's up to the fans, though, to look at it logically and say, "You're the bad guy. You may have a sad story, but you have to die. And nothing is going to change the fact that you are Cancer." I believe that the people who stick around and remember this series for seasons to come will be more than capable of doing that, because we're geeks, and we like the show like that. Some people like to believe and appreciate the show for that reason, and don't just see it as a playground for ships, memes, and waifu wars. Please try to acknowledge that, even if it can be hard to see through the mess. Okay, that's my piece. Whether this rebuttal was worth it or not will be determined by those of you who watched it. If you made it all the way through to this ending point, I thank you for listening until the end. I have some links in the description of various things, and you can check those out at your own discretion. I wasn't able to draw something up for this video in time to make it anything special, and I hope that that's okay. Feel free to say whatever you want in the comments or ignore it entirely at your leisure. As I've said, you are free to have your own opinions and draw conclusions on the matter for yourselves. This has been the Channel of Spam, once again with your friendly crackers PSA to take care of your bodies, both for your own sake and the sakes of the little people inside of you who do their best to keep you alive despite the odds. And whatever you do going forward, do not feel bad for Cancer. Ciao!